everybody. My name is Kirsten.
And I'm Cheryl.
Welcome to KC Cafe Podcast.
After supporting more than 900 families and counting, we realized we spent years doing the work, but not enough time sharing what we've learned. This podcast is our commitment to change that. We're chatting about education, politics, dyslexia, legislation, Jordan's principles, schools, families, and First Nations communities. We're not experts, just deeply connected when ready to share what works, what doesn't, and what needs to change. So we've decided to start a series called Breaking Barriers. In this episode, we're going to be talking specifically about dyslexia, and for short, we call it KCDLC, but it's for KC Dyslexic Learning Center.
So our first talking point was kind of getting into what is KC Dyslexic Learning Center? Why did we start KCDLC?
And I think that I always want to kind of have a disclaimer about, we're starting this podcast because we felt that we had things to share, building on experiences and talking to families and data and working with tutors in schools. And I think one of the things we always want to be clear about is I am the owner of KC Dyslexic Learning Center, and this is where this experience comes from. We want to do something separate from the center because we do feel that that is a little bit different than talking. I almost want to say, well, that's the whole point, right, of breaking barriers, is we want to make sure that we're talking from our experiences and not from a brand. So KC Dyslexic Learning Center is a center that I started. We're going, 2007. We're on year 19, and Casey is the initial of Kirsten's name. We started it when she was 12 years old because there wasn't anywhere in Manitoba to help her with her reading and spelling. So I think I always want to be clear that the center runs with transparency, advocacy, data, accountability. Those are all the checkpoints that we have within our staff and within ourselves. But I want to always make sure that that we are part of that center as well. And this we're hoping to be just a little bit beyond that with regard to talking openly.
Yeah, I think also too, like the shared experiences, we are working with families every single day. And I think their stories need to be shared too. Yeah. I think everybody's stories need to be shared. And, I think if you guys are watching, like and subscribe and share, because I think that the more this message, gets to everybody, then we can talk about it more. I think when I was in grade 12 and we were like, let's just start this center. Like it was just kind of like a...
No, you were 12 years old.
Oh, I was 12.
You were grade 6, so you were younger than you thought.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Going back, I think it's like, yeah, well, I was in grade 7.
Because you were 12.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did I say grade 12?
You did.
Oh, shoot. See, this is what I mean by dyslexia. It's like, wait, what did I say?
Yeah,
grade 6. No, it was grade 6 we transitioned, so then, it was grade 7.
When we started, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's always important to know we all wear many hats, right? I think that we wear hats with what our job is at day to day, what our roles are within our families, how we can help each other and work together. And I think that we really need to make sure that we connect more. Mm-hmm. One of the things I want to talk about in this episode was dyslexia. What is dyslexia? That was something that I thought was very difficult back then because when you Googled what is dyslexia, there was a lot of myths, there was a lot of people's opinions, there was a lot of stuff that was very hard to kind of separate. So now we're year 19 now. One of the things I think that I've held with where you find your information from, one source that I always rely on is the National Institute of Health has specific dyslexia research. Yale University has a dyslexia department. Mayo Clinic, I know, has a definition of it. There is a definition in the ICD-9, ICD-10 manual, the DSM-5 manual for psychologists. There are all those things that can be accessed. When we're parents looking for what is dyslexia, most of what I see is that things move or people see things backwards. And I know we're going to talk about myths too, but I think that's something that comes up quite a bit that is very difficult for parents to, like I said, navigate through. And I'm going to kind of go into, I tend to do this. Squirrel, shiny thing moment. One of the things we've asked ourselves at the center was, how come people look at our website and how come people call us but they don't keep following through, or how do they know to look even at our website in the first place? Because I think a lot of people don't know they need us. I think a lot of people don't know what they're looking for. So when we go back to defining what is dyslexia is a language processing disorder that affects in 4 areas. Reading. Everyone with dyslexia can read. It's up to the point that their visual memory can take them. Spelling, always bad. Word retrieval, I know the word in my head, but it's like my lips didn't get the message. Auditory processing, if you give lists too quickly, hurry up, we're late for school, get your backpack, did you brush your teeth, make sure, remember that permission form. It's usually, okay, I remember backpack. Everything else is gone. So giving oral instructions too quickly is something that is very difficult. So those are the 4 ways that dyslexia affects people. Is there different severities? Yes. Is there different moderations? Yes. We are not psychologists. We highly recommend going to psychologists who are versed in testing for dyslexia specifically. Not everyone has that in their toolbox or in their tool belt. Make sure that who you're going to knows how to diagnose dyslexia. I think that's one of the hardest things, that parents don't even know what they need. A lot of things we also find in psychologist reports, just being on that topic, is when we say it's a specific learning disorder, that is the actual title of the psychologist manual. SLD, specific learning disorder, and they'll say in reading, or then there's also in writing. In reading is also known as dyslexia. That is what it says in the manual. Note, dyslexia is an alternative term. Those are all under the same umbrella. How are we as parents supposed to know that? Right? That's not our lane. But just putting it out there, it is. I think dyslexia, one of the other things that we've noticed with dyslexia is people always think stuff moves or stuff shakes, or you need to change the color, or you need to change the font. None of that is dyslexia, proven by science that is dyslexia. It's this thing called IRLEN, IRLEN. It's where things do move. Again, that's very controversial. Dyslexia is a medical diagnosis. IRLEN, I believe, does not have that category. It has not been categorized as a medical diagnosis. But what's the harm in changing a color? It's not for dyslexia. That's for movement.
And comfort, right? Like
comfort, yeah, ease of looking.
Yeah.
As a parent, I found it very difficult for me to understand Kirsten. When she'd say, oh, my stomach hurts or I have a headache, it wasn't because reading or spelling gave her that. I think it was the anxiety and the, oh my gosh, the frustration and the, right, of I need to do this in school and can't perform. Would you say
it was
that
like the pressure of everything around me being like, you have to be like this, you have to learn this specific way, and this is the only way you got to do it. And it was like, I don't want to, how do I do it like that? I don't see it like that.
And right when she says, I don't see it like that, again, remember, it is not a visual problem, right? It is not something that you see different than anyone else.
Yeah.
Kirsten had IRLEN and she had dyslexia. So those were things that we had to make sure and take care of each one in order for her to be a good reader and speller. As a mom, it was very difficult for me to understand why it was so difficult for her, because school was easy for me. I learned to read before kindergarten. It wasn't hard. Spelling tests, I got 100% without even studying. When I read the science behind brain difference, so yes, dyslexia is a medical diagnosis, but there isn't anything wrong with the brain.
Yeah.
So my brain, I have one side is 10% smaller. I was reading with the side of the brain, or the parts of the brain that were meant to process language efficiently. So it didn't matter how you taught me, I was reading the way that it was supposed to. Kirsten, with a dyslexic brain, actually has more brain mass than me. And she's trying to read with the side of the brain or parts of the brain that are meant for that visual. So it's like she was taking a picture of those words, like cat, if you can imagine, short letter, tall. She was memorizing the shape of that word. Dog, a tall letter, a small letter, letter with a tail. She was
Mm-hmm.
memorizing the shape. And if you have a good visual memory, you can do that for quite some time.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't, that's where the problem lies.
It's a
When you
spelling.
notice, well, and the spelling is always right. Like
Mm-mm.
that doesn't transfer.
No.
So if we're talking about reading specifically, you can read by shape for so long, but then shapes become very common,
Mm-hmm.
explicit, explaining, exponential, exponent, and then you can't read by shape anymore. So typically when you get a dyslexia diagnosis, it's that there's a lack of decoding or phonemic awareness. Like those are the terms that they use to be able to describe not being able to pull words apart for reading or for spelling. So hearing that about that she processed language differently than I did and was using different parts of the brain than I did made it so much easier for me to
Mm-hmm.
understand that she wasn't doing it on purpose. She wasn't, being naughty or just not listening. It was her brain was working different than mine. Orton Gillingham has been proven to be one of the types of programs that work best for people with dyslexia to
Mm-hmm.
help with the reading and the spelling.
Yeah.
There has been research for Orton Gillingham based programs, the original ones, since the 1930s. We're going almost 100 years of research. This isn't new.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't something that we don't talk about anymore. It is, because dyslexia affects 20% of the population. That is not a small number. We're First Nations. First Nations, there was a study done in Alaska, and their community was 43%
Yeah.
dyslexic. Dyslexia is a gene. It's the DC2 gene. It's inherited. Um, I made the mistake once of saying, our family has brown hair, brown eyes, and we also happen to have dyslexia. It
Mm-hmm.
was misunderstood by a parent saying, well, if I have brown hair, brown eyes, does that mean I'm dyslexic? No. I
Yeah.
was just saying that specifically for our family, that's something that we've embraced and understand. That we have dyslexia prominently with our family, and I think you said it the other day, kids in our family are like, when's it my turn to have to learn reading and spelling in a different way?
Yeah.
Like,
Well, we kind of all talk in a different language to each other because we're saying the rules of the program and we're kind of relating it back to real words that we see in everyday life, and we're like, hey, there's the rule in that word, or
yeah,
hey, this is this syllable type. And a lot of people are like, what do you mean by syllable type? What do you
yeah,
mean by that rule? Like, why are you saying those things, right?
yeah.
So I think a lot of us understand that kind of like
A
click
silent
talk a
letter
little bit.
pair, or we have a schwa, or we have all of those things that we learn within programming
Yeah.
that we all talk about. That's our normal talk now.
Yeah.
The other thing that I also want to say about dyslexia specifically is that in order, and I say this to parents all the time, in order for that diagnosis of dyslexia, your child has to be, or you have to be smart. It's part of the deal. Average, above average intelligence in reading and spelling is far behind as predicted by your IQ. So your IQ, when sometimes psychologists, like I've talked to psychologists many times trying to decipher what these reports say to them and how we can take that as parents,
Mm-hmm.
is that there are parts of the IQ test that are weighted with vocabulary. So if you have issues with receptive or expressive language, that will affect your score. But you do have to have an average or low average of IQ to be able to be diagnosed with dyslexia in the first place. I think when looking back, talking about dyslexia, I think something that's really also hard to kind of mesh together is
Mm-hmm.
that people equate low literacy, the inability to read and spell, is dumb, not smart,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That seems to be
The
really meshed
intelligence.
together, yes.
Yeah.
And
Separate.
it's very separate.
Yeah.
Just because you can't read and spell, it doesn't mean that you have a low IQ.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't intelligence. Intelligence is not measured by literacy. So I always want to make that super clear, especially parents that are ashamed of my dyslexia or that I struggle. Like,
Or I
there's a
pass
lot of
this
shame.
on, that's gonna ruin their lives.
Yeah.
You know, like.
And I always want to make sure that parents understand that this is a gift. They'll say, well, it's not a gift, it's hard. Just because it's hard, it doesn't mean it's a gift. I had this meeting once with education here in this province, and they said, Cheryl, you have really high expectations. Your assumption is that all kids that you work with dyslexia are going to be able to read and spell. You just have to accept the fact that people with dyslexia, not all of them are going to be readers or spellers. And I said, I looked around the table and I said, can we all agree that in order to have dyslexia, you have to have an average, above average intelligence? And everyone around the table agreed to that. And I said, well, isn't that interesting? Because we are saying people with average, above average intelligence will never learn to read. Maybe that's our problem. Maybe that's something that we have to learn to teach the way they need to learn, not our traditional way of teaching literacy. We have to do it different for them. And that because they're not reading and spelling, it's our fault. Like that's something that we have to take on ourselves to be able to help our kids be literate. And that is, at the end of the day, those types of conversations are the reasons why I started this center in the first place. I was tired of people saying that you would never be able to read, and I had too high expectations for you. And 50, 60 years ago, you could have gone into a trade or an apprenticeship and you wouldn't have had to have literacy. But the society that we're in now, you have to. You have to graduate high school. You have to have post-secondary. Even in the trades now, you have to have a red seal, which requires you to write a test. So I don't think it's fair anymore to say, well, you can always go without literacy. It's not fair, because then our kids cannot do what they want to do and that they're good at because of literacy. So,
and it affects so much emotionally too, mental health. Like, I think it affects the things you can't see, right? I think a lot of people stuff all that down and they're like, everything's great. But it's like, is it good? Like, do you feel that you're happy with how things are? And it's like, if you're not, well then let's change it. And I think that it's really hard to change something by yourself and to do that, right? And I think that that's the whole point of the center as well, was to support people that are like, I don't know what to do. And we're like, we were in the same boat. Like, we had to work through it alone, and we're tired of seeing that happen. We all have to be together.
We just had a meeting with the parent today, before we recorded this, and Kirsten and I were talking about, right, the whole goal was, this is a new student that we have, and we just wanted to connect with the parent, because that parent knows their child best. And there were some things that we weren't quite sure. We kind of guessed, but we wanted to confirm with Mom. And we had said, we have a shared heritage. So Kirsten and I are both First Nations. My First Nations community is Barons River here in Manitoba.
Mine's Cowsis,
Saskatchewan. And one of the things that we were talking about with this parent was that because Mom was about the same age as me, and we were raised to not speak our language, to not do traditional, whether it was regalia or dances or beading or, right, we were to speak English. You're in the city, speak English. We're not teaching our language.
You can't take certain foods to school. You have to eat this specific, fish you can't take to school. It smells bad. Like just those things. Like,
and right, I think one of the things we were talking about this morning was that we are trying to get back that pride in heritage.
Yeah.
And Kirsten was talking about your Tuesdays.
Yeah, I do powwow club every Tuesday.
And that's like learning how to dance, right?
Yeah, learning how to dance. Well, I know when I was younger, my auntie got me a jingle dress. And, like, I remember seeing the jingle dress, but I would think I was too young to remember if I even danced or did anything.
Yeah, we make you put it on, and then you do a dance, and we're like, oh, she's good naturally.
I feel like I remember that. Like, I remember being so pumped about this dress that had bells, and I was like, yay.
Yeah.
So now being, like, I make moccasins now, and I do beadwork, so it's like I'm taking on this big project to design all my stuff, and it's a lot. Like, it's going to be a whole year project. I'm not even, like, halfway through it, and powwow starts in the summertime.
Making the dress for your regalia for your dance. This is the star blanket that I made, because I started to do that, too. We were talking about with this mom this morning was bringing that back, because our kids, part of dyslexia is also the creative part. The creative part, and Kirsten was saying, when you were starting to learn literacy.
Yeah, it was very, like, I was so, like, gotta do tutoring. This is the focus. I need to get my reading and spelling back up, that I didn't paint. I didn't do dance anymore. I didn't do sports. Like, I was starting to get away from all that, and I think when I was in, like, book 8, that's when I was like, I need to figure out how I'm gonna get creative again, because my brain, like, it was weird. It felt like before where I'd be so visual, like a movie, kind of like planning it all out and like, oh, this is what it would feel like and this is how I would do it. And now it was more like make a list. What am I writing? What's
Yeah.
the words that I need to make this make sense on paper? And wow, I have a writing voice now. I didn't realize your writing voice is different than your talking voice, and what you would say this way is different than how you'd say it talking. And so I think that was like a whole new world too. But I also was like, I need to get back to painting because the fact that I'm so frustrated that I can't figure out what to paint
Yeah.
was just so
And
irritating.
surprising because
Like,
that had never happened.
yeah.
And I remember her running up from the basement going, and she being so upset. And I'm like, what's the matter? And she says, I went to go paint and I always have the picture in my head of what I want to paint. And she's like, it's blank. I don't know what to paint. I don't have an idea what I want it to look like. And she's like, I don't know what to do. Like, she was like panicked.
Yeah.
That was when I realized, because the science I had read was that once you start stimulating the side of the brain meant to process language efficiently, that it became, you were creating different neural pathways.
Yeah.
And I didn't think, like, I was like, yeah, right, okay, that's going to happen. And when she
Totally
came up,
did.
that absolutely like verified and validated it is, because we were focusing so much on literacy, both reading and spelling, your brain was processing information differently.
Yeah.
Pictures weren't the dominant thing anymore.
Mm-hmm.
When we were talking to this mom today, she was saying the same thing about her daughter being super creative. And that was Kirsten's advice, was to not hyper focus on literacy, to also embrace the creative side and keep that. And that it's super important to do both. The other thing about this conversation today, every time I talk to parents, I see myself back with you when we were 19 years ago. And right, this child is being bullied and doesn't feel pretty and right has a hood on all the time, and mom is saying, I'm trying to do the best I can, but I don't know if I'm doing it right all the time. And as parents, we really take on, we're not doing enough. I think as a parent, you just don't know where to start. And part of our goal always with this podcast and the things that we do at the center is, how do we support parents and families? Because it takes a community to raise a child. And I think we've forgotten that. I think that we have to embrace the team of that child, school, tutoring, family, everyone who is great psychologists, speech language pathologists, OTs. We have to come together and truly, truly collaborate for the well-being of that particular student. And that has to be for every student. It can't be for, this group of students. It has to be specific for that student. And please, parents, your children, it's their basic human rights to get these needs met. And we have to pick teams that are going to support our kids and who it means just as much to them as it does to us. And you get to pick your team, right? You get to do that. Please don't forget that. The other thing I think that we were and came across on a number of occasions is dyslexia. That's an old term. We don't believe in it. Well, thank goodness dyslexia is a medical diagnosis and it is not a religion. I know we're going to get comments, me saying that. I say it with purpose and with meaning. Everyone has their beliefs. Everyone is allowed to choose their religions. Everyone can do what they want with that regard. Dyslexia is not a belief. It is a medical diagnosis and should be treated as such. And I think that is far too often swept under the carpet. I use the comparison all the time. If we break our leg, get a cast on, the doctor says, no walking or putting pressure on that leg. Get someone else to carry your backpack because you have to take it easy on your leg. Dyslexia is a medical diagnosis. If you make a child read or spell in class without any intervention, and that they are proven to be significantly behind grade level for reading and spelling, if you get them to read and spell in class, it's like saying, I don't care, your leg is broken, walk on it. That's what we do to children that are diagnosed with dyslexia, that do not have accommodations and are forced to perform like everybody else in their class. It's not fair.
No.
We would never do that if it was a broken leg. So please always keep that in mind. It is damaging, the shame that comes with dyslexia. There are so many studies that
I think it just puts people in this, like, again, the system is built for supporting families who work, right? You take your kid to school and you go to work and you do that. And I think it's kids have to fit in a perfect way at school, and they have to learn this way, and they have to sit in a classroom, and they have to go for recess and this time. And it's, I think some people, that's not always the right way. There can't be only one way to do it. So I think asking people that are dyslexic or asking people that are struggling, I think it's fair to ask them, hey, how do you learn best? Yeah. How do you think that this would kind of, because I feel like that's what brings in innovation. That brings in ideas, and, you know, it gets you out of being so rigid and this is the only way. Opens up your perspective to see something in a different way.
Our province is a very big advocate of inclusion. In our inclusion manual, we do have their specific spot that does have dyslexia in it. A lot of parents don't know that. The Supreme Court of Canada, there was a really big case that happened. I can't quote the year. Kirsten's going to have these links to these things at the end of this podcast as well. But there's a Supreme Court ruling that did acknowledge dyslexia, and that public education had to accommodate. And please, Kirsten's going to quote me correctly on that.
Yes, I will put all links down below for sure.
One of the things I know we're limited with in our province is I'm a really big advocate of when people know better, they do better. I truly do believe that. One of the things lacking in our province is the lack of knowledge with dyslexia for teachers within our schools for dyslexia specifically. I'm very grateful because we have a lot of schools in this province where the teachers are learning Orton Gillingham, which is fantastic. I am so happy that that has happened. But in all reality, a classroom teacher cannot give the intervention required for a specific student in a manner that is going to improve and bump up their kids up to 10 to 12 grade levels. There's no way that that can happen.
I don't think you can fit in the timeline of the year.
The teachers that we require for them to do in this province, they're
truancy, there's after school programs, it's lunch duties,
all curriculum, all like the things that we pile on our teachers. I have so much respect for them because they have so much on their shoulders. We cannot expect them to be able to provide an intervention that is going to significantly change a dyslexic student's literacy abilities. We can't have that expectation on a teacher. It's not fair to them either.
No.
But what we can expect is accommodations. How is it that we're setting up a classroom to accommodate those kids so that it is fair while the intervention is taking place and until they can do it on their own? I think that's something that is realistic. One of the things I think is super important too, and I talk to parents, and we were just talking about this to the parent this morning. In your psych assessment, when you have the diagnosis for dyslexia, for school it should be, like in our province, we have an IEP. It's an individualized education plan. The kids in this province do not qualify for an IEP because one of the criteria for that IEP is a low IQ. That doesn't apply to our children. So our children do not qualify for an IEP. But they do have the right to an AEP, an adapted education plan, an ALP, an adapted learning plan, an SSP, a student-specific plan. Those are things that they have the right to. It's really important as parents, do not just sign, read it, go through it. We volunteer from our center to help families with that. It's really important to know that and to use that. So the last thing I want to talk about is advocacy groups. There are some, so Kirsten was talking about, are there different, for different countries, like we're in Canada. So my understanding is that Canada and the States, United States, share ICD-9, ICD-10 codes because they're medical codes, and DSM-5 codes. If I'm wrong, if someone could please correct me, I'd appreciate that. But that's my understanding, is that Canada and the States have the same. I think what's different with Canada and the States is because Canada has healthcare, that is what's changing it. So for example, when people come to our center, when they have that medical diagnosis of dyslexia and a medical practitioner recommends a specific type of reading program like Orton Gillingham, which was one of the tops to be recommended, our clients can then claim our tutoring as a medical expense at the end of the year on their taxes. and that isn't the same for the States. We don't know what the nuance is of the States. I'm sure there's ways to claim it, and
Yeah.
it would be really great if we could learn that through this, so that we could share with families, because we do have a lot of American clients as well. We're not just geared to Canada. Like, our student population is throughout the world, the States, Canada, and throughout other countries as well. But with regard to, we also have something called the disability tax credit that a lot of our families can access. That is over and above claiming the tutoring as a medical expense. We also can, as long as the medical practitioner recommends technology, whether it's tablets, writing, whatever, tablets, laptops, that can be claimed as a medical expense as well. So advocacy groups, I think, is really also important to note. We started at Friends of Dyslexia. Oh gosh, we're going on 17, 18 years there. It is a registered charity. There is Dyslexia Canada, which is also a registered charity. Jordan's Principle is where our First Nations, we're getting some funding from them. A Variety Club of Manitoba, we're getting some funding from them. I think that it's really important to find out who those advocates are. I don't think it's fair that families have to privately pay for tutoring. I don't think it's fair. I think the right to literacy is something that is somebody's right. We're working on that, right? Friends of Dyslexia, we're really trying to pay attention to be able to get the funding, to be able to have everyone get the tutoring that they need outside of school.
Yeah.
I know in Manitoba that's something weird. Families don't typically, we do a lot of hockey, we do a lot of sports, we do a lot of other things. Tutoring isn't something that we typically do here in this province. I don't know how to change that or help that. I'm kind of stuck at that. Any opinions or advice I think would be helpful in that area. Do you have anything to add for those advocacy?
Well, I think also too, like, just for, February, we were talking about, just last month, we were talking about planning October, as this October is Dyslexia Awareness Month, right? So we're already in the beginning of the year thinking about, well, what is that going to look like for October?
This province,
right?
What
Just
are we
for
gonna
this
do
year.
here? Yeah.
So that's where I think through just sharing our stories and, connecting with everybody, we're hoping that we can spread awareness about dyslexia and find people that support these causes, and so that we can create awareness and have an awesome event in October and meet people across this country that are kind of on the same mission as we are, right? I think the only way for them to know that is for us to share where we're at in Manitoba.
And we also have to be better at, where is it applicable to people? A lot of people don't think they need us. A lot of people think dyslexia isn't the issue. Again, I can't stress enough how dyslexia is the most common reason why people struggle with reading and spelling. And there should be no shame in that, because you have to be smart to be dyslexic. We're trying to work on your literacy and make those gains. And I'm really proud of our center, KC Dyslexic Learning Center, because we're accountable, right? We have norm standardized tests that we go through and make sure that we are gearing and initiating programming for that specific student. We currently have 150 active students at this point. Those students all have senior tutors. They all have people behind the scenes. I don't think people know how much time we put into individualizing that student's program, but that's what it takes. That's what it takes. So whether you're using us or another tutoring program, hold them accountable. It can't be just our opinion of, oh, they're getting better. Hold schools accountable. What and how? Show me. Where's the data that they're reading and spelling better? It can't be a level literacy test. It can't be that, because our kids are really smart and they memorize the words that they're overexposed to. It has to be a normed standardized test. Where are they reading and spelling comparatively? Schools, tutoring, everyone has to be accountable for progress. Have to let parents know. There has to be communication. No one should do anything in secret or silence. That true collaboration is something that needs to happen for the good of every single child. It just has to be, or it doesn't work.
For sure.
So this episode was, breaking barriers. This episode is specifically about dyslexia and KC Dyslexic Learning Center. It isn't going to be something that we talk about or direct to. We just want to make sure that we're fully transparent and know that that is our beginnings. We're going to be talking about things that aren't even related to dyslexia. That's the goal, right? But this one is specifically about what we do, and we're proud of what we do. We have no shame in that whatsoever. I'm proud and grateful to work with the people that we do every day, with the families we do every day, the schools within our province that we do, where I'm very grateful for everybody we've come across the last 19 years. And hope to make new relationships.
Thank you guys so much for joining today. If these conversations resonated with you, please subscribe and leave a review and share with your friends. We'll be back next week. We can't wait to dive into more with you.
Bye.
Bye.